Well, obviously, all of us in the environmental community, WWF included, are quite disappointed about the announcement, although we see it coming. But more than just disappointment, I think this is also a call for action. This is a moment in history where countries and business and mayors and concerned public should stand together more united than ever for our common vision.
Mr. Zhao, now in his statement, President Trump said after the U.S. withdraws from the Paris Agreement, he would still work to ensure that America remains the world's leader on environmental issues. How could the U.S. lead the world when it cannot even keep its commitment on climate change?
I think this is a first-hand display of the new Trumpism. Trump has displayed this American first ideology during his trip in Europe, and I think he had a bad trip in Europe having a dispute with European country leaders, and he failed to commit United States to the Paris Accord, and right after he returned, he pulled US out of it. So even with this his promise that he wanted to renegotiate renegotiating new terms, it's nearly impossible because European countries and China has insisted that the Paris Accord will not be renegotiated. That, I think, reflected Trump's fundamental ideology that the world is not a global community. It's an arena for countries, for corporations, for people to compete in it, which is very different from China's worldview right now. China views the world as a community for common destiny. So I think in this point, it's very hard for the US, particularly the Trump administration, to come back and lead the world. Instead, China's stepping up and cooperating with the European Union and championing the next stage for climate change control.
Yeah, well, as you said, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang just made this announcement about China's policy on climate change. Let's take a listen first.
There is a saying in China, our words count and our actions should be successful. China will stand by its responsibility on climate change, and China doesn't stand alone on this issue. Our scientists in this area are in connection with the world and follow climate protection developments very closely.
Now, Mr. Lo, how will the US's withdrawal from the Paris Accord influence China's role in fighting climate change? Some are saying China might be forced to take on the leadership role in that regard, but China might not be willing to do that.
Well, I think as our Premier have said, that China stay committed to the Paris Agreement, and the agreement itself is a global collective effort towards reducing greenhouse gas emission to avoid catastrophic climate change for the common good of everyone on this planet. It would take every country to work together. The burden should not be singled out onto one or two countries. Of course, as one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gas emission in the world, China and the US have been playing very significant leadership role in the lead up to the Paris negotiation. We expect that all the countries will stay together more united than ever in order to reduce our climate risk in the future.
Mr. Zhao, now Chinese Premier Li Keqiang with his European counterparts are expected to issue a joint statement on the Paris Climate Accord committing to fully implementing the agreement. How do you think the US's withdrawal from this accord is going to affect the global efforts in climate change, and what can China and Europe do to salvage the deal and salvage the efforts, basically?
I think on the one hand, pulling out of the Paris Accord is a very bad decision by the Trump administration. However, on the other hand, the United States is a federal system. On the local level, particularly the state level, California and New York has made steps to remedy these consequences. So, for example, the governor of California will visit China from tomorrow and will probably sign cooperation and other deals with China, further improving its stance in leading the global climate change agenda. So I think overall, the United States, the majority of people in the United States still support controlling of the climate change and emission controls. So in the future, more states will be like after the Kyoto Protocol, more states will joining together and further commit themselves to the Paris Accord, even though the federal government's quitting that accord.
However, that message coming from the White House is indeed very discouraging. Now, Mr. Lo, what kind of negative influence could this announcement have on the United States, or basically on the world in terms of wildlife protection?
Well, see, even with the announcement of the withdrawal, there is still a strong support from the business community, the regional political leaders in the United States to stay firm with the Paris Accord. If the United States, because of its announcement, will be reducing its effort in combating climate change, then we may see a situation where the negative impact of climate change will not be mitigated, slowed down as we would like it to be, as outlined by the Paris Agreement. Take one example. We will have more extreme weather events. We will have more rapid acceleration of glacier melting in both the Arctic and the Antarctica, specifically for the wildlife. I can cite one example. Scientists are saying that with the current rate of warming, coral reefs of the entire planet may risk extinction, massive extinction by 2050. So what we are deciding today have a conditioning consequences for the fate of both human beings and wildlife of our planet.
But President Trump just doesn't seem to believe in that. How can he be convinced, or how can he be persuaded? Is there any possibility in that? Mr. Lo,
well,
briefly.
I think the the scientists of the world on climate change has been coming into very strong consensus about the risk that we are facing. Mitigating those risks is of prime priority right now. We just cannot risk the chance.